Hello and welcome to coverage of Grand Prix Washington, D.C. We're in the finals. Owen Turtenwald, you see him right there, ranked 22nd on the top 25 pro rankings versus Jared Boettcher. Sneak and Show versus Blue Right Red Dover. Owen Turtenwald loves this deck. He's written a few articles about it. It is his pet deck for Legacy at the moment, and he is incredibly familiar with how it works and how to play it. Now, Jared, on the other hand, has chosen one of the most powerful weapons in Legacy to play with, Sneak and Show, able to cheat in huge creatures like Grizzlebrand and Emrakul, the Aeon's Torn, for much, much cheaper than they rightfully should cost, and annihilate his opponent with them.
Jared has the benefit of playing first this game. He came into the top 8 as the number 2 seed, Owen the number 5 seed. Pretty important in this matchup. Allows Jared to go first and develop his mana before Owen has the chance to have an island out for days. And you get a good look at Owen's hand thanks to Gitaxian Probe.
Yeah, see what we see. We see there's a Brainstorm, a Force of Will, Lightning Bolt, Wasteland, Daze, one lander here, and a Spell Pierce. So a pretty good hand. Excuse me, that's a 2-lander. A pretty good hand here from Owen Turtenwald.
It's a really good hand if Owen happens to have a Delver of Secrets on the top of his library.
Yes.
It's the only thing that's missing from this hand.
He has the tools to keep Jared Boettcher from comboing off here for quite a while, but without any pressure, eventually Boettcher's going to be able to find a way to get a huge creature into play here. So let's see if Owen can pick up his coveted first Grand Prix title. This guy crushes Grand Prix and has for the last few years now, culminating in 2011 with a Player of the Year title off of 7 Grand Prix top 8s in 1 year. Another land there for Owen Turtenwald. So no early pressure, just a polluted Delta, and he says go.
Thanks to that Gitaxian Probe, Jared knows exactly what Owen's working with. He knows exactly what he needs to play around. So he's going to set up his hand as such, since he knows Owen doesn't have all that much pressure, to wait and be patient for when he wants to go off.
All right, he's just going to pass the turn back to him, and there was a Delver of Secrets off the top for Owen.
That's huge.
So let the pressure begin. He's also going to be able to keep Spell Pierce up now that he's playing his Delver on the second turn of the game.
And Daze and Force of Will.
And he's got Daze of Force and Will to back that up as well. So things taking a turn to the good for Owen Turtenwald here. But Jared has a pretty stacked hand, too, with a couple of Force of Wills in there.
Yeah, these players played in the Swiss. Jared defeated Owen in, I believe, 2 short games.
Okay.
Jared was super confident coming into the finals that he'd be able to do it again. We have to see in this match who will leave a victor and a Grand Prix champion. So Jared thinking about whether or not he wants to counter this Delver of Secrets here.
Yeah, I think he's got Force, Sneak Attack, Gitaxian Probe.
Intuition.
And Intuition, right.
So he's got the tools.
Also another land.
But nope. It's much better for him to hold on to those counter spells when he's trying to cast one of his combo pieces, either Sneak Attack or Show and Tell.
He gets an Emrakul for the turn. He's going to lead things off, though, with another Gitaxian Probe and see more counter spells we talked about before. He's got Force of Will, Spell Pierce, and Daze. So the whole suite that he runs, plus a random Lightning Bolt that isn't going to do much at the moment, and a Brainstorm. Jared's going to hit his land drop for the turn with the Volcanic Island. He's got Grizzlebrand in his hand, drawn freshly off of that.
That's pretty big.
Gitaxian Probe. He's going to pass the turn back, and there's a trigger, and he just blind flips. Pretty nice one there, Swords to Plowshares.
That's big. That transformation is really, really huge for Owen. He can sit back on his counter spells and continue attacking. He has a 5-turn clock here, and really put the screws to Jared to combo off perhaps a little more quickly than he'd want to.
Yeah, and thanks to the Lightning Bolt, he can even shorten the clock a bit here.
Owen's going to
Wasteland. Excellent. And this is one of the things that that you see quite often against the Sneak and Show deck is that the prudent players will go after the red mana for the Sneak and Show player because there's actually not that much of it floating around in the deck.
And it's really important because in order to cast and activate Sneak Attack on one turn, you need 2 red mana to do that.
That's right.
And
often that comes in the form of like a Lotus Petal, but if the game goes any longer than that one turn, which sometimes it does, you need more red mana.
It's a pretty common occurrence for that to happen, actually, that the Sneak and Show player doesn't have enough red mana to both cast and activate on the same
so
turn.
Intuition off of the floated mana from the Wastelanded Island, Volcanic Island, and then the other 2 lands here. And does Owen have to fight over this, or can he let this resolve and then fight over, the coming Sneak and Shows or whichever one of those?
It's pretty likely that he'll let this resolve and just counter whatever comes. It's an interesting opportunity because he can daze here without any fear of anything happening, right?
Yeah,
whereas he might not be able to daze whatever Intuition goes and gets. That would be the reason to counter Intuition here with a daze, for instance, as opposed to something else.
He also has a Spell Pierce that he can use here if he wants, but he's going to daze after floating a blue mana. And he's going to use the blue mana after the daze resolves. He could have used it for Spell Pierce if he needed to, but he doesn't have to here, and he's going to fire off a Brainstorm. So playing tight here, making sure to use up every bit of mana that he possibly can. He's going to shuffle away some dead cards potentially here if he wants to. Hasn't quite entered his attack step, but there it is. Drop you down to 11 and say go. So Owen still has access to Spell Pierce, Daze, and Force of Will. And here's another Ponder.
This is exactly where Owen wants to be, right?
Yeah.
Being able to counter spells when he needs to, drawing into another Spell Pierce there is huge.
And he's going to Spell Pierce this, it looks like.
Yeah.
He wants to get a red mana source so he can fire off that Lightning Bolt if it comes to that.
He just needs to slow down Jared for a couple more turns here.
Uh-huh.
He's on a 3-turn clock thanks to that Lightning Bolt.
Yeah, that Delver draw early in the game was huge for Owen. He's got some threats that aren't that great in this matchup. There it is, Spell Pierce your Ponder.
Again, he's using this opportunity to actually cast Spell Pierce when he knows that it's good, as opposed to perhaps later in the game when Jared has access to a bunch of 2-mana producing lands and can pay.
And that happens all the time, too. You'll see people try to hold Spell Pierce up too long against these decks, and then they'll just play an Ancient Tomb or whatever and just be able to pay for it and make your Spell Pierce dead. So Owen's going to make sure that he gets that value right now, and he does. No extra land drop for Jared either. So Owen Turtenwald is closing in on victory here, but we know how the Sneak and Show works. It can win out of nowhere. Insect Collaboration hits him down to 8. So close. And there's a Lotus Petal, so it is a mana source, though it isn't a land.
He does not have the 4 requisite mana to cast Sneak Attack, and that's the only one of his combo pieces he has in hand. He could have probably resolved a Show and Tell there if he had it.
Is Owen considering firing off a Lightning Bolt here? Yes, he is. He's going to take this opening. He doesn't want to get stuck later where he has to use his counter magic and can't fire off the bolt. Plus, if he draws another bolt, he can end the game this turn. He didn't find it, but he is going to drop Jared down to 2 with a grip full of counter magic. It looks good for Owen. Can he hold on? It's another Sneak Attack, and that's going to do it. Owen Turtenwald up a game here in the finals.
Wow. What a game. Owen did exactly what he wanted to do that game, resolve an early Delver, transform it quickly, and hold that counter magic to prevent Jared from getting off his combo. Jared stuttered there for a little bit, and that's how the game went.
That's right. Wow, that was pretty nice there. One of the cards that Owen Turtenwald's deck is using that we've seen a lot this weekend is True Name Nemesis. Not particularly good in this matchup.
Yeah. True Name Nemesis has been seen all around the tables this weekend, defeating multiple mid-range decks similar to Owen Turtenwald's Blue-White-Red Delver deck, the Rug Delver decks, the Bant decks, the Deathblade decks. Just this really, really absurd card for those matchups. But of course, really not all that great against the combo decks.
It's just too slow.
Yeah, it's 3 mana for a 3/1. Perhaps not the end of the world, but the upside that you get from it as opposed to running a Vendilion Click, for instance, just isn't there. Like, the Sneak and Show deck is not going to have lightning bolts for your guys, right? Let's pull up the players' sideboards and see what they're thinking as they look at each other's deck lists, calculating exactly what they need to board in order to make the matchup better. And there we go.
All All right, a little clarification there from the judge. You're allowed to look at your outside notes. In this case, it's your opponent's actual deck list during the sideboard process. When the match has started, you're not allowed to anymore. And that's what Owen's doing there. He's carefully studying his opponent's deck list to see if there's anything that he needs to consider here out of the board. Take a look at their sideboards. Meddling Mage.
Perhaps Pyroblast and Red Elemental Blast are really, really important.
And he looks like he's got 3 total of those. So,
coming from Jared, he's probably going to board in the Blood Moon. Owen doesn't have any basic lands in his deck.
Okay.
So it just becomes another must-counter spell for Owen Turtenwald. One that can come out as early as turn 2.
Yes. I mean, technically turn 1, but realistically turn 2.
And Jared's probably going to bring in a little bit more counter magic, the Diverts, Flusterstorm, maybe the Swan Songs, and the Red Elemental Blast.
Okay.
I don't think that, besides maybe the Meddling Mages, Owen's going to board in anything else.
I mean, does Jared have that many ways? Let's take a look here to actually like destroy a creature. Pyroclasm? That's pretty good.
Red Elemental Blast.
And Red Elemental Blast. Okay, so he does have some ways to do it, but Meddling Mage can be a must kill, right? I mean, if Owen brings it in, names the right card, it can just be a complete game stopper where Jared must find one of those answers for it. Pyroclasm seems pretty good here.
Yeah, I mean, the game plans of these two decks aren't really going to change post-sideboarding. They just want to make their decks more advantageous against their opponents. So, I mean, Jared is adding those Blood Moons to have more must-counter spells, have effectively more copies of Show and Tell and Sneak Attack.
I see.
Owen Turtenwald is still going with the same game plan that he's trying to resolve an early creature and then hold back counter spells and ride that creature to victory, just like we saw in the first game with that early Delver of Secrets that transformed into an Insectile Aberration and dealt a quick 12 points of damage.
All right, so Owen Turtenwald up a game here in the finals. For those of you just tuning in, Legacy. You can see the trophy right on the table. I love that shot. Washington, D.C. 2013 champion.
Owen wants it so badly. He lost in the finals, the 22nd top-ranked player of Grand Prix DC 3 years ago to Brad Nelson, and unfortunately, due to the ride situation, had to ride back home with Brad Nelson's trophy sitting next to him.
So brutal.
He really just wants to grab that trophy. Even more so, he's top-aided now 13 Grand Prix and does not have a championship.
That's right.
Does not have a trophy to his name.
Yeah.
It's been a long time coming for Owen
Could
Turtenwald.
absolutely be his day here. I mean, he has demonstrated his mastery of the Grand Prix. And, you know, it's tough. I mean, you make it to the top 8. We all know how Magic is. There's a lot of variance. It's not like you can just run right through. A lot of the best players playing the best Magic of the weekend are there to fight against you, and it's not that uncommon to have runs like this. But Owen, you know, he has definitely earned it to get to this point, and I wouldn't be shocked to see him take it down. You can see how he got here. He beat Andrew Cuneo and Sam Black to get to the finals. It has not been easy at any step for Owen. On the other side, Jared Boettcher, he beat Deshaun Baylock and Drew Tunison, so potentially an easier route to the finals here for Jared.
But still has definitely earned his way here with his Sneak and Show deck. 15 grueling rounds of Swiss, two a semifinals and a quarterfinals matchup. And
he looks like business too. Look at him. He's ready to go. So one of these gentlemen is going to be holding that trophy and, well, probably chatting with me here in the booth.
Game number 2.
And it could be after this game if it's Owen Turtenwald. So Jared's going to be on the play here again.
Yep. Owen's hand is not particularly good. I don't think there's any lands in there.
No lands. He brought in the sword, it looks like.
Jared considering whether or not he wants to keep his hand. Both decks mulligan pretty well.
Okay.
I mean, most decks in Legacy mulligan relatively well, are pretty resilient. But it looks like Jared's going to keep. Owen is going to go down to 6 cards. Get one with a couple lands so you can actually cast some spells.
So Owen's going to mulligan to 6. Like you mentioned, though, most decks in Legacy are pretty good about mulliganing. You know, with all the Ponders and Brainstorms flying around, both of these decks are playing those cards. You can kind of craft things, get to the lands you need, get lands that you don't need out of your hand. But if you don't have any lands, there's not really a choice. Owen's deck is a little bit more mana intensive than most decks that run Delver of Secrets. You know, the Rug Delver list is pretty happy to run off of 1 or 2 lands for the duration of the game, but Owen's deck actually does reach up into the 3 range a little more often. Can't be quite as aggressive with those wastelands.
So here we go. After Owen's mulligan here in the finals, game 2 here in Washington, D.C. See if these 6 cards are better.
Yeah, those look pretty good. All right, he's going to keep it. So here we go. Ponder to kick things off for Jared. Sees Grizzlebrand, Gataxian Probe, and a land. He's going to keep those ones, draw a Gataxian Probe, and pass the turn back. No need to cast that right now. Pluto Delta for Owen Turtenwald, ships a turn back. Jared draws that Grizzlebrand. We know he's got Misty Rainforest sitting on top of his library. If he doesn't want that, he's going to shuffle it away with the Scalding Tarn here.
Owen draws a second land, which is pretty important. He doesn't have a quick creature here, but he does have a grip full of counter spells, so he can at least counter a bunch of stuff while he moves into the mid or late game.
But he needs to find that pressure. Now he can close out the game pretty quickly. He had that sword. We see Jared Boettcher carefully playing around potential wastelands here. He's fetching basic lands. He's running a 2-color deck, so he can do that.
Yeah, that's really important. You don't want to hurt your chances too much by getting it on basic land, getting greedy when you know that your opponent's running a wasteland deck. Now makes him a little bit more vulnerable. It will be a little tougher for him to cast a bunch of blue spells on one turn and then a bunch of red spells on the next turn. But that's the price you have to pay when the alternative is even worse. So again, Jared has the combo in his hand. He's got Sneak Attack, and he's got some big creatures in the form of Gristlebrand and Emrakul.
Plus the Gataxian Probe.
He can see what Owen's working with, but it might be a little time before he can go off, because we know that Owen's got a lot of counter magic in his hand.
That's right. So Jared's happy being under no pressure whatsoever here to just sort of sit still. Owen has ripped a couple of lands, though. He's got his 3rd land on the battlefield, but no play. No way he can open the door for Jared to go off.
There's also a Sneak Attack in Jared's hand.
There is indeed.
So it's possible he can continually just jam these big spells into Owen.
He's going to stay patient, though. He hasn't even cast that Gataxian Probe. He's just going to sit back. Stoneforge Mystic off the top for Owen Turtenwald is going to prompt him to crack one of his fetch lands here.
And it might be at this point we see something from Jared. He'll probably fire off that Gataxian Probe on his turn.
Okay.
To see what Owen's working with. If Owen's on nothing, then it's, all systems go. But once he sees Owen's hand, he knows that he's got to move quickly and start filtering his draws in some way or another.
Uh-huh. All right, there it is, Stoneforge Mystic. Is that going to resolve?
Looks that way.
Sure. All right, little mix up there, but we're recovered. And it's a Batter Skull.
Emphatically, Owen slams that down from his deck.
Okay, so this turn, going back to Jared, is going to be huge. This could definitely be the one for Jared, where he fires off Gataxian Probe, works on his game plan, and sees if he has the tools to get down Grizzlebrand. It looks like he's already drawn his card and even played a land for the turn here.
Okay, well, he's just going to crack all 3 of his lands, go to 16 life.
Okay.
Big turn.
So that's happening. Get an island, get another island, and get a volcanic island. So 5 mana at his disposal. He has waited for the right turn. He's still not under that much pressure here.
Yeah,
but his life total's getting a little shaky because he's at 16, where if he can get Grizzlebrand into play now, he can even Force of Will and still be able to draw twice off of it, though that would put him in bolt range, but he's going to know that. So let's see what Jared's plan is here. I think he's going to go for the probe and see where he's at. There it is. Now he's down to 14. So he's only going to be able to draw 7 off the Grizzlebrand, and it is Spell Pierce, Force of Will, Pyroblast, and then a Sword and a Batter Skull, which are not relevant at the moment. But a full grip here for Owen Turtenwald. He can Spell Pierce something or Pyroblast it, and then he can Pyroblast and have 2 Force of Wills if he wants as well. So he's got a nice 3 counterspell hand here, basically. That's a lot to fight through. And Jared's going to have to find out the best way to do it. Well, it might just be brute force here because he's got a couple of show and tells and a sneak attack in his hand. So maybe he just says, I'm going to start just jamming these in here, and you're going to have to just counter all of them.
Yeah, show and tell. Owen's going to Pyroblast it, likely.
Yep.
Jared's holding those 2 lands up, making the Spell Pierces moot. Yeah, it's too bad for Jared. He doesn't have any counter magic of his own to fight these counter wars.
He just has brute force of as many combo pieces as possible.
That's one of the nice things about the Sneak and Show deck is that you can have redundant copies of Show and Tell and Sneak Attack. You only need one big guy, one Grizzlebrand or one Emrakul to get things done.
All right, so he just ran that one in and said, you know what, that's fine. And another Force of Will off the top here for Owen. I think Owen's just got to pass a turn here, and he does that. Another land. Those were helpful. And he's just going to have to start making Owen Turtenwald use up those Force of Wills. He could also use, if he really wanted, both Spell Pierces to get this.
Seems more likely that he's going to Force of Will, removing a Spell Pierce, and then if there's something else this turn, use that other Spell Pierce.
Okay.
Spell Pierce's value is really...
I mean, it's waning quickly.
Yeah.
Even this turn, it's not that great. Force of Will, remove Spell Pierce. Sure. Is he just going to fire off the other one here? No.
I mean, he knows of the Spell Pierce.
Yeah, so there's no reason to let Owen get value from Spell Pierce.
You would do that if he had a way to resolve another one immediately, because he knows how many, or he thinks he knows how many blue cards are in Owen's hand. There's only been one draw step, and well, there's a good chance that Owen was able to draw another blue card, you know.
Yep.
You might just have to go for it.
So this is interesting now. Sword of Feast and Famine is what Owen decides to put into play. He's going to start going to work on Jared Boettcher's hand here as soon as possible.
Yeah, it's really important. I mean, it's this pretty awesome equipment, sort of Feast and Famine, allowing Owen to equip it and then untap and pass the turn with all of his lands untapped. He drew a Polluted Delta for this turn, so he still only really has a Spell Pierce and a Force of Will in his hand. But he's going to attack, force Jared to discard. Jared
take 3, drop you to 11, and this is where it can start to get pretty sketchy because Jared, I mean, look at his hand. It's all huge combo pieces, and he's going to have a tough time making this work. Owen's at 17. Now he has a fetch land to 16. The difference between 16 and 15, though, can be pretty huge. Unfortunately for Owen, he does only have 6 permanents, so if Jared... Is it another Show and Tell?
I think he drew another Show and Tell. Maybe not.
Okay. Let's take a look at what Owen wants to do here. So he's got Force, Spell Pierce.
The obvious play here is to just Force of Will.
Removing Spell Pierce?
Yeah.
Okay.
But he could also...
if he's worried about a second Show and Tell, though, he could Force of Will, removing Force of Will. Oh. I didn't hear what the judge said there.
Alrighty. That was awkward.
We've got our crack team of coverage reporters
time to think about the show and tell
on it for you guys at home.
The head judge asked to take a look.
Something might be amiss with Owen's deck.
Yeah.
Okay, so the head judge has asked to check something. And Owen was sort of in the tank about what to do about this Show and Tell, but he's going to get a little extra time to think about it here. intense moment down the stretch. And an interesting time for this interruption to happen here. So let's.
All I'm going to say is that we noticed there was some markings on some of your cars on the side here. We just wanted to check them. Nothing you can have in your library. It's just they're a little chewed up. You can see these side marks there. Be careful with that in the future. Just be really when you're using these sleeves. All right? Okay. We're all set.
Okay. So nothing really there.
Just be careful in the future.
Yeah, they noticed that the sleeves were getting a little banged up, and they just wanted to remind Owen to be careful. So show and tell is on the stack, and Owen Turtenwald is actively thinking right now, what is it that I need to do to make sure this doesn't happen? If he goes force, remove, force, he can keep spell pierce to protect against another show and tell or maybe a land. All right, nope, but he's going to go for spell pierce removed.
This is a perhaps
force.
safer play because he knows, or if he thinks that Jared has a sneak attack, which is his last card, he can hope to draw a land on his turn and have 5 mana up to actually hardcast Force of Will.
Or a blue card. He drew a land.
Okay. That's pretty much the majority of his deck, right, at this
yeah.
point?
Yeah, exactly. Blue cards and lands.
Yeah.
That's the deck, yeah. So he goes down to 15, but he's got 5 lands and a hard castable Force of Will in his hand, and he's also going to be able to knock one of Jared's 3 cards out of his hand, so he's going to be tearing away at his resources and his life total.
Yeah, he's going to cast Batterskull here pre-combat
okay.
because Sword of Feast and Famine is going to let him untap all of his lands.
Yeah, this is pretty risk-free. There's not a lot that can interact with that Stoneforge Mystic. It would be a disaster if Jared had something, but there's just not.
Owen's just got to remember that trigger on the Sword of Feast and Famine. Sure, at this point he won't.
Yep, and there it is. So Emrakul gets discarded, which is going to shuffle the graveyard of Jared back in. Owen's getting pretty close to a victory here, though. Right now, Jared isn't able to crack that Misty Rainforest, or else he would be at 7, which is exactly how much power Owen Turtenwald has on the table here. And sitting with a Force of Will in his hand, he has put Jared in a terrible position. He's going to have to come up with something pretty impressive here.
Yeah, Jared really needs to draw a Spell Pierce here.
Yes.
That would do it.
Yes.
Otherwise, he's really close to being dead on the following
also,
turn.
Owen
Big
now
draw
has
step.
9, so there it is. He's just going to run out Sneak Attack. Force of Will, hard cast.
Is this going to be
it? Is this it? Is this Owen's first victory at a GP? Jared's going to give him the sweat, and that's it. Owen Turtenwald is our champion here in Washington, D.C.
What a game.
Great stuff.
Owen Turtenwald, Grand Prix Washington, D.C. 2013 champion. Long time coming for Owen.
Long time coming for